forced into wearing a dress. Then my parents walked in. I stood frozen in front of the mirror, eyes wide with disbelief. Staring back at me was the perfect picture of a bright, bubbly preteen girl, complete with pink lipstick, soft eyeshadow, and rosy cheeks. Except it wasn't a girl. It was me. Zoe had transformed me so easily that I could hardly believe it. I blinked once, then twice, then a third time, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. A surprised laugh escaped me. I turned my head toward Zoe, who was watching me with a big, confident grin.
See?
I told you it would work, she said proudly. It was way too easy, Martin. Wow, I muttered, still glancing back at my reflection. Zoe sat down on a cushion atop the wooden bench, folding her legs neatly beneath her. She looked pleased with her work. You actually make a pretty convincing girl, she added with a light laugh. Then she stood up smoothly and asked, "Want to see the full look?" I nodded, curious.
Yeah.
She motioned for me to follow her with a quick wave of her hand and a soft hum. As she walked out of the room, I hurried after her into the hallway. Zoe moved with her usual energy, hands clasped behind her back, ponytail swinging with each step, her shoulders swaying in that carefree way she had when she was up to something fun. She always seemed to know exactly what she was doing. Even when it looked like she was just being silly, Zoe was usually in control of the moment. I didn't mind. Hanging out with her was always an adventure. At the bottom of the stairs leading to the second floor, she stopped and turned around. Her hands rested on her hips as she gave me a dramatic pause. "Well, Martin," she said, her eyes sparkling with mischief, "are you ready for the rest of the surprise?" "It looks like you're really enjoying this girl version of yourself," Zoe said with a playful smile. I stood there caught off guard. I wasn't sure if she was teasing me or testing me. It took me a moment to respond with something safe. "Whatever you want to do is fine, Zoe," I replied, trying to sound casual. She grinned. "Today isn't about what I want. I can tell you're curious about this whole thing, and honestly, so am I." "Her?" I asked, confused, as she started climbing the stairs. I followed close behind. At the top, Zoe was already at her bedroom door. She peeked out from a small opening, her face full of excitement. "Give me 1 second. I'll be right back." She closed the door. I could hear her moving things around inside. It sounded like she was tidying up in a hurry. I waited patiently in the hallway. After a few minutes, I called out, "Zoe, everything okay in there?" "Yeah." "1 second," she shouted back cheerfully. Then the door swung open. Hi. "Come on in," she said brightly, waving me inside. "Sorry about the wait. I wanted to tidy up a bit before you came in." I stepped into her room and noticed she had changed. She was now wearing a simple pink tank top and comfy cotton shorts, both with fun, colorful writing on them. Her energy seemed even more lively than usual, like she was putting on a show just for fun. "Zoe," I said, half laughing, "are you okay? You seem a little extra hyper today." "Me? I'm great," she replied, placing a hand on her chest with an exaggerated, surprised look. Then she pointed at me. "But look at you. Still in your regular jeans and t-shirt. We might need to fix that too." "You're never going to turn heads looking like that," Zoe said, laughing lightly at the idea. I stood there, completely surprised. "Zoe." "Sure," she said, gently pressing her fingers to my lips for a second. "You said you wanted to see more of this girl version, right?" She smiled. "Or maybe you meant more of me doing the dressing up part?" She took a small step back. "If you're not interested anymore, we can just forget it and play video games instead." Her voice suddenly sounded more like her usual self, though a hint of disappointment crept in.
No.
"I'm fine with it," I said quickly. "I just wasn't expecting you to act like Bianca Logan all of a sudden." Bianca Logan was the energetic, over-the-top character from our favorite show, Jacob's Peak. Always full of pep and drama. "Sorry," Zoe said, blushing a little. I wondered how long I could keep up the silly act. She sounded more honest now.
Here.
She handed me a small backpack like the ones lots of girls carried to junior high. "What's this?" I asked. "If you keep asking questions, it won't be as fun," she teased, gently pushing me toward the other side of her room. She pointed to the folding screen by the closet. You can change over there. Everything you need is in the bag. Just swap out your clothes for what's inside. I started to ask another question, but she shook her head. No questions. Just try it before you overthink it. I opened the bag and pulled out the items: a simple t-shirt with short sleeves, a skirt that was longer than I expected, some thin knee socks, and a couple of basic white undergarments with small pink bows. At the bottom were a pair of shoes. You really want me to wear all of this? I asked.
Yes.
You do want to try it, right, Marty? She said encouragingly. I hesitated for a second, then nodded. I guess so. Zoe clapped her hands. That's the spirit. She turned on some upbeat pop music to set the mood. I stepped behind the screen and started changing. I took off my shirt and jeans, then sat down to remove my socks. When everything was off, I glanced in the small mirror and noticed how much I still looked like a regular kid who had just turned 13, not like the older boys at school yet. Taking a deep breath, I finished changing into the new clothes. I bundled up my old clothes and handed the bag out from behind the screen. I'm going to finish getting changed now, I said quickly, so Zoe wouldn't come around the screen yet. Okay, she replied, taking the bag. But don't take forever. I'm not good at waiting. She sounded playful again as she hopped across the room, singing along with the music on the radio. A moment later, her arm reached around the screen, holding a glass of Kool-Aid. Here, I thought you might be thirsty.
Thanks, I said.
I drank most of it quickly and set the glass down. I took a deep breath and started putting on the rest of the clothes she had given me: the soft white underthings, the short-sleeved pink t-shirt, and the pleated pink denim skirt. The skirt felt shorter than I expected once I zipped it up. I started to feel nervous. What if someone else saw me like this? Just as I was worrying about it, everything suddenly felt strange. The music seemed far away, my head got fuzzy, and the room started spinning. I felt like I was losing my balance. The next thing I knew, I felt a hand on my shoulder, steadying me. Zoe's voice came through softly. Hey, it's okay. You've got this all wrong. Let me adjust it a little. She helped straighten my shirt and skirt, then guided me to sit down. I felt her slipping the socks and shoes onto my feet. Everything after that went blurry. When I finally came to, I was lying on the couch in my own house's den. The lights were low, and my head was pounding. I sat up slowly and rubbed my temples. Something felt different about my hair. As I stood up, my balance felt off and a rush of cool air hit my legs. I looked down and froze. I was still wearing the pink denim skirt and the snug pink t-shirt. The shirt was short, showing part of my stomach, and the shoes had small heels that made walking feel weird. I stumbled over to the mirror on the wall, heart racing. I lifted one leg carefully, holding onto the end table for balance, and looked at the shoe. It had a small heel, maybe 2 inches high. They were cute pink shoes, paired with white knee socks that had a thin red ribbon and a little heart charm at the top. My hands had pink nail polish and longer nails I didn't remember getting. I took tiny, careful steps toward the mirror, feeling awkward and off balance. When I finally reached it, I saw my reflection clearly. My hair was now in 2 high pigtails tied with big pink ribbons, with smaller ribbons woven through the tails. They brushed against my upper back when I moved. My face still had the pink lipstick, eyeshadow, and blush from earlier, plus some sparkly glitter on my cheeks. I looked like a typical young girl dressed up in a fun, girly outfit. The pink t-shirt had curly writing across the front that read, "Daddy's Little Princess." I stepped back and took it all in. Suddenly, I heard a noise.
Zoe.
I whispered, my voice sounding a bit higher than normal. I stayed low, squatting down near the mirror. The lights in the room suddenly turned on bright. I squinted, startled. I had been watching the front doorway, but I heard my parents' voices coming from behind me. They had entered through the garage.
What?
Who is this? Dad said, surprised. Oh my, Mom added right after. Sweetie, stand up please, Dad said gently. And step away from the mirror on the floor. I stood slowly and took a few steps away. Turn around, he said. Are you one of Martin's friends? I shook my head, feeling the pigtails bounce. That was a mistake. Dad noticed right away. Then what are you doing in our house? How did you get in? Panic hit me. I couldn't let them recognize me like this. Before Dad could get closer, I tried to run toward the other door. The shoes made it hard. I could only take small, clumsy steps and kept sliding. I nearly crashed into a bookcase but kept going. Just as I reached the doorway, Mom stepped in front of me. I tried to stop, but I slid right into her. We both tumbled down, and I landed hard on the floor. I lay there dazed. Mom stared down at me, her eyes wide with shock. She had recognized me immediately. As everything started to fade, I heard Dad asking if I was hurt. "No, Robert," Mom said quietly. "Our son isn't bleeding." I woke up later in the living room. The lights were bright, and my head felt foggy. When I reached up to brush hair from my face, everything came rushing back. My hair was long with pink highlights and styled in pigtails. The girly outfit was still on. My parents had come home right after I first woke up in the den. Now I had to face them. I sat up quickly, still shaken by the sight of myself dressed as a young girl when my parents had walked in. I had been so focused on my reflection in the mirror on the floor that I hadn't noticed them entering. My panties, the thought made me pause. "Get a grip, Martin," I told myself. Zoe had clearly set me up. I wondered what she might have put in that Kool-Aid to make me pass out, and why she had brought me home looking like this. I needed answers. A sharp ache ran through my body as I moved. I let out a groan before I could catch myself. "Oh, you're awake, sweetheart." Mom's gentle voice came from behind the couch. "Mama?" I asked, sounding small and nervous. "Yes, dear. I'm right here," she replied in her warm, comforting tone. "Your father stepped out for a bit, so just relax and take it easy." "But Mama," I started, feeling scared and wishing I could hide somewhere. My voice gave away how uneasy I felt. "I had a good look at you while you were resting," Mom continued. "You really went all out on this outfit, didn't you?" "It was Zoe," I began, but the words caught in my throat. "Zoe helped you?" Mom finished for me as she walked around the couch and sat down beside me. That was kind of her. She made sure everything was done nicely. I shook my head in quick, short movements. "What do you mean, kind of her? Aren't you upset with me?" "For what, dear?" Mom asked, looking straight at me with calm eyes. She gently lifted my chin with her hand, so I had to face her. "Don't be afraid. I'm not angry at you." She let out a soft sigh, the kind that showed she was thinking carefully. "I actually think you look very cute. It takes real courage to try something like this and explore different ways of expressing yourself. I'm proud that you felt comfortable enough to do this, especially with your close friend Zoe helping." "Mama," I gasped, surprised. "How did you know I like spending time with Zoe?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. I had kept that feeling hidden for a long time, even from myself. I tried to backtrack for a second, then gave up and sighed. "Yeah, I do like her," I admitted quietly. "But this whole thing was her idea, not mine." "Really?" Mom asked, sounding genuinely surprised. She leaned back a little, thinking. "Yes," I said. "I didn't plan any of this." She studied my face for a moment. "So Zoe came up with this dress-up game?" "Sort of," I replied. I didn't want to explain everything, because I still wasn't sure how it had all happened so fast. One minute we were just hanging out and having fun. The next, she was acting extra playful, giving me the drink, and then everything went fuzzy. "I woke up here right before you and Dad came in through the garage." Mom waited patiently, her expression encouraging me to continue. I hesitated, but her kind but steady gaze told me she wanted the full story. So I took a deep breath and started explaining what I could remember. I got invited to Zoe's place after lunch to try out her new PlayStation game. I went over without thinking much of it. I gave her a few details about what I'd been up to, but kept some things to myself. We played for maybe an hour, and then her mood shifted. She started asking if I remembered how we used to play house and dress up when we were little. Then she got playful and a bit teasing. I tried to explain to Mama afterward that I hadn't planned any of it. I described myself as completely clueless, just going along. But I could tell Mama wasn't fully believing me. The moment I got to the part where I began changing clothes in Zoe's room, she stopped me.
"Hold on," Mama said.
"You're telling me she set all this up, and you just went with it without saying a word?" I didn't know what to say. "Oh, please. Mama rolled her eyes. You were hoping she'd get all excited and you'd get to kiss her, weren't you?
She saw right through me.
Mama, I groaned. Hey, I was a teenager once too, remember? She said. But keep going.
So I did.
I told her the rest as well as I could recall. The strange dizziness and heaviness that came over me after a few sips of the drink Zoe had given me. So, you don't remember cleaning your room or redecorating? Mama asked. Redecorating? I repeated. Yes, your room. She gestured with her hands as if that would help me remember. What do you mean? I stood up quickly and winced. My head was pounding. You've got all these boy band posters up now, and that pink chair rail you had covered is showing again, she said, getting to her feet. Boy posters? The thought made me feel ill. Mama grabbed my arm as I hurried toward the stairs. I had to see for myself, and I wasn't about to be careful. Easy there, sweetie, she said, but I pulled ahead, taking 2 steps at a time. At the top, I tried to turn fast around the half wall and lost my footing. My legs slipped, and I fell hard, my hip hitting the edge of the top step. Only grabbing the railing kept me from tumbling backward down the stairs. Mama caught me by the waist and helped me stand. I told you to take it easy, she said quietly. Those little girl dress shoes don't grip like sneakers. She held my hand firmly as we walked to my bedroom. When the door opened, I was grateful she did. The pink chair rail was uncovered again, standing out more than I remembered. Above my bed and across most of the walls were pictures and posters of teen heartthrobs from magazines. Even the ceiling had them. What happened in here? I asked, not really expecting an answer. I thought you'd know, Mama said. My clothes? I looked at the open closet, now full of pastel dresses. Yes, all dresses and skirts, she said calmly. Mama. I was panicking. I couldn't remember any of this. No matter how hard I tried, nothing came back from Zoe's house. I was sure whatever happened was just that one outfit. I never would have walked home in anything else. Relax, Mama said firmly. I'm calling Zoe's mother to see if she knows anything. This is beyond a joke. She ran her fingers through my pigtails as she spoke, and somehow that calmed me down. She led me to her bedroom and had me sit on the edge of her tall bed. My feet didn't quite reach the floor, which I'd always disliked, but now, in these clothes and hairstyle, I felt even smaller. Pamela, Mama said into the phone. It's Karen. How are you?
She paused. Good.
Hey, did you see what Zoe and Martin were up to this morning? Really? He did what? Her side of the conversation was starting to worry me. Well, he was in an awkward position when Robert and I came home this afternoon. He claims Zoe did this against his will. Mama murmured a few responses, then said, Would you mind if I brought Martin over and we sat these two down to sort this out?
Great.
We'll be right over. Thanks, Pam. She hung up and turned to me with a strange smile. Well, sweetie, we're going to get to the bottom of this. She took my hand. Any idea why Zoe would tell her mother this was your idea? She asked as I slid off the bed and found my balance.
No, Mama.
I swear it was her idea, I pleaded. It's okay if you really did want this, she said, her tone softening as if she was testing me. I didn't want this. I promise, I said firmly. Okay, relax, she said with enough force to stop my arguing. I'm just saying, if that's what she's claiming, your father and I would be okay with it. I doubt that, I said. Daddy wouldn't be nearly as understanding as you. Daddy? She questioned, noting my childish term for my father. Are you sure this isn't something you wanted? She pressed again as we reached the front door. Yes, I said, unable to hide my frustration. I don't want to be a girl. Just because you're dressed like a princess doesn't mean you can talk back to me, young lady. My mother's voice had a sharp edge, and the way she said, young lady, stung more than I wanted to admit. Sorry, I muttered quietly. Let's go, she said, opening the door without warmth. My heart dropped. Right there, about to ring the doorbell, stood my best friend, Randy Carroll. Hello, Randy, my mother said, smiling. What brings you by this evening? Hello, Miss Stevens. Randy smiled back briefly, then turned to me. And hello, beautiful, he added with a wide grin. Surely he could tell who I was. He couldn't be so distracted by the short lace dress that he didn't recognize his own best friend. "Cut the nonsense, Randy," I said, not bothering to hide my voice. "Martin?" Randy gasped. "Is that— oh my goodness. I am so sorry." He stumbled over his words. Wow. Now you really do look like a girl." My mother pushed me out the door and closed it behind us. Suddenly, I felt exposed. A gentle breeze brushed against my upper legs, and I felt terribly self-conscious. "Shut up." I glared at him, rolling my eyes upward to meet his face. I stomped my foot for effect, but with the small heel on my dress shoe, the sound came out pathetically weak. At least, that's how it felt to me. "No, don't," Mama said. "Please, Randy, tell me the story. I'm very curious to hear it." She gave me a look that silenced any protest I might have made. Randy glanced at me, as if asking permission. I turned my face away. After a pause, he realized I wasn't going to help him or stop him. Much to my dismay, he continued. "Remember when Martin stayed over at my house last fall?" he started. "Martin stays over at your place a lot," Mama said flatly. "Can you be a bit more specific?" Her casual sarcasm was meant as a joke, and Randy's quick grin showed he understood. She had skillfully put him at ease. Randy laughed. "Yes, ma'am. It was the same night Katrina had her sleepover for her birthday." Katrina is Randy's little sister. She turned 10 last fall and had a group of her friends over for a slumber party after the main birthday celebration with both boys and girls. To keep Randy from bothering Katrina's party, their mother let him have a friend stay overnight. For a while, it worked, until the girls came up to the upstairs game room looking for the boys. "Your mother wanted 2 nearly teenage boys around all those little girls?" Mama asked. "That sounds like a recipe for trouble to me. You didn't bother those precious little angels, did you?" "Angels." I caught myself before a swear word slipped out in front of my mother. "Achoo." I faked a sneeze. "Angels whatever," I said bitterly. "Yeah, well, they weren't exactly angels to us," Randy added. "What could they do to you too?" Mama asked with a grin and a skeptical tone. "A lot," I said flatly. "They're little monsters, all of them." "Martin," my mother scolded. "He'd be the one to complain after what we went through." Randy defended me. "The girls came up to the game room asking for help getting something down from a closet. So, being the nice brother and friend that we are, we went downstairs with them. They wanted us to help get down an old board game from the top shelf. It was really high up. I don't know how they even spotted it. I had to use a step stool and could barely reach it." Mama nodded along as Randy continued. "Well, next thing, they asked us to pull the table apart to add the extenders so everyone could play. That's where the problem started. Martin and I couldn't get the table to separate." "So?" Mama asked. "We worked at it for a while, double-checked the locks, and finally gave up. We told the girls it was stuck," Randy said, sounding defeated. "That's when the teasing began." "Don't tell me you're upset over some grade school girls teasing you for not being able to pull apart a stuck table," Mama scoffed, looking sternly at me. "No," Randy said. "They made a bet with us. Katrina and her best friend Cindy bet that they could get the table apart. And if they did, we'd have to be their models for makeovers and dress-up games that night. All night. And you're going to tell me that a dozen little girls pulled apart this big table?" Mama said, amused. "Not only did they do it, but they pushed it back together and made us try again. That was the second bet, to redeem ourselves. Otherwise, we'd have to spend the night as girls with them," Randy said, more animated than usual. "And you took that second wager?" Mama asked in a tone that suggested only someone foolish would say yes. Which we did. We had to. They'd already done it once. Maybe her tone was right. Clearly, we had been foolish to accept any of their terms, let alone the extra agreements we'd given into. "We did, Mama," I said quietly, almost under my breath. "Don't mumble, dear," my mother said. "And lift your head. Nobody likes a gloomy person. And you're too nice-looking to walk around with your face down like that." "Mama," I gasped, snapping at her. "That's better," she said, ignoring my frustration, pleased that I had looked up. I knew better than to let my head drop again so soon, so I made myself keep my face up for everyone to see, no matter how embarrassing it felt. So we said, "Sure, whatever." Randy continued as if the interruption hadn't happened. And sure enough, that same table was stuck again. "You're joking," Mama said. "How did they move it?" "Well, we found out later there was a trick to it," Randy answered. "We just didn't know the right way to pull on one end before the other. Once you knew how, even 2 or 3 of my sister's friends could separate it easily." "So they made you dress up?" Mama asked, chuckling. "Sounds like this isn't your first time in pretty skirts." She looked at me with one of those I knew it grins. "Yep," Randy said. "They separated us into different rooms and made us ask them for real clothes to wear. Basically, they wanted us to say we'd try being girls for the night." He scoffed, as if the whole thing was ridiculous. "Randy, please." I begged him not to go into details. "Hush, princess," my mother said. I stared at her, speechless, while Randy kept talking. "I got lucky," he said. "Katrina gave me a pair of pink shorts with white lace trim on the legs, along with leggings and a Princess Cinderella t-shirt." "You call that lucky?" Mama asked, clearly wanting to hear what was unlucky. "Yeah, compared to what Marty was given," Randy laughed. "But even that was nothing compared to what he ended up wearing." "Oh, really?" Mama asked, turning her attention to me with a curious look.
Yeah.
Randy looked at me and stopped laughing when he saw the anger on my face. Cindy pushed him into Katrina's room and told him to put on the outfit on Katrina's bed. Well, he doesn't put on the simple sundress. No, he puts on the leotard, tutu skirt, and fairy wings from Katrina's Halloween costume. He laughed loudly. "Shut up," I snapped at Randy. "Marty," Mama scolded me. "Hey, you're the one who pranced around all night in 4 different girly outfits," Randy teased. "4?" Mama asked, clearly surprised. "Don't remind me," I said to Randy, but he kept talking. "I doubt you'll ever forget those cute little things." He started laughing so hard as we walked that he almost tripped several times, especially the lace-trimmed undergarments. Mama stared at me, her eyes wide. "Why in the world did you wear undergarments like that?" she stammered, her questions so sharp that I knew I had to come up with some explanation. Yes," I said meekly, wishing I could run away. I doubted I could have even if I tried, in these shoes. The girls said I would behave better as a young lady if I wore them.
I didn't have a choice, Mama.
Honestly. "You did have a choice," Randy cut in. "They asked me to wear them, but I said no. You did it because you wanted a kiss from Emily." Emily was the only girl close to our age, just a year younger than me. She was there as something like a helper to Randy's mom, keeping an eye on all the little girls and 2 troublemaking boys. "You wore lace-trimmed undergarments to get a girl to kiss you?" Mama asked. "Well, they wanted me to wear them." I started to defend myself. "And that was the second pair I put on, because Emily offered to kiss me if I did." "Second pair?" Mama stopped and grabbed my arm gently, but firmly. "Marty, I want you to be honest with me right now." Her tone had become very serious. "Are you afraid to tell your father and me that you actually like these girls' clothes? It's okay if you do. I mean that. I just don't want to get to Zoe's house and find out you lied to me. Because if we get there, and that's what I discover, you in a little skirt and those undergarments, you'll be grounded for a very long time. And I promise you, I'll make you wear the most childish outfits I can find." Her stern look let me know she meant every word. "Mama, I don't remember what happened with Zoe," I said softly. I had to repeat it when she asked me to speak up. "And I don't think I want to be a princess." "Watch your mouth," Mama snapped. "But Mama, just because you like dresses and skirts doesn't make you anything other than yourself," Mama said. "Well, it seemed pretty unusual to me," Randy said bluntly. "Randy," Mama replied before I could, "do you think your mother would like to hear you making such mean remarks to your best friend? Because I doubt she would. And I'm fairly sure I could get her to put you in a skirt to make you behave if I told her what you're doing." Mama's firm tone and steady expression gave me a warm feeling, like a blanket of safety around my shoulders. "No, ma'am," Randy replied quietly. "She wouldn't like it."
I'm sorry, Marty.
He paused for a moment, and I could tell he meant the apology. "It's okay," I said, looking at him and trying not to smile too much. even if I did feel oddly lighter about the situation all of a sudden. I know you didn't mean it. Enough, you two, Mama stopped us. We're almost at Zoe's house. Why don't you two walk in front of me and talk? I need to think about how to speak with Zoe's mother about all this. She let herself fall behind our pace, even though my steps were tiny. My stride was so short that I had to take 2 or 3 steps for every one of Randy's, almost skipping to keep up. More than once, he looked at me strangely. And more than once, I found myself holding onto his arm with both hands to keep from falling. Eventually, we settled into a slower pace as he shortened his steps to match mine, and I occasionally took his hand to stay steady. We didn't talk much, like Mama had wanted. I felt humiliated, and the few quiet comments Randy made were kind and often apologetic. I didn't know why he kept apologizing, but his sincerity made me feel better, so I didn't argue. Do you want me to stay with you? Randy asked as we reached Zoe's front yard. No, I'll be okay, I said. Actually, this is going to be embarrassing enough as it is, I added after a short pause. Do you think I could head out and you just tell me about it later? I asked Randy. Sure thing, Randy replied with a mischievous grin. He knew that kind of teasing bothered me, and I knew he knew it too. Sorry, he said with a softer, more disarming smile. I couldn't help myself. He chuckled lightly when he saw how uncomfortable I looked. Call me later. Okay, I will. Goodbye, Miss Stevens, Randy said politely to my mother as he turned to leave. Leaving already? Mama asked. Yeah, Marty seems embarrassed about all this, and I think I'm making it harder on him, he said, adding something else I couldn't quite catch. He's a good boy, Mama said, coming up to me after their brief exchange. Yeah, Randy's a good friend, I said, trying to push back against the sweet, innocent impression I felt Mama was implying. You know what I mean, she said with a stern look that cut right through me. So do you, I said flatly. Let's get this straight. I started to speak with more force than I had since waking up dressed like this in front of Mama, when the door suddenly opened. Zoe stood there wearing a short jumper styled like overalls but cut to be a knee-length dress rather than pants. She wore no tights or socks, just slip-on shoes with a flower on the front of each, flowers that matched the ones holding her ponytail. Hi, Marty, she said cheerfully. Oh, hi, Mrs. Stevens, she added, noticing my mom next to me. Please come in. We're just about ready for tea and cookies. Would you two ladies like some? I winced at being called a lady and couldn't bring myself to answer. I would love to, Mama said. And so would Marty. But Zoe, dear, she added without pausing, Marty isn't a lady. At least Mama was standing up for me. Zoe giggled. Well, he looks like one, and he did say he wanted to be just like me. She did a little twirl. And I am a lady. So wouldn't that make him a lady right now, dressed up all pretty like me? She struck a cute pose, bending slightly with her hands clasped behind her back, blinking with a playful grin that almost made me agree before I caught myself. Zoe, Mama started again. Let's set aside all the cutesy talk for now. Marty is confused by all this and says you did this to him. Pamela. Mama greeted Zoe's mother, who was sitting at the table when we entered the room. She stood up, and the two women hugged. Good to see you again. We really need to get together more often like we used to. Surely, Pamela replied. It's been over a month now, hasn't it? Easily, Mama answered warmly. After a few moments of greetings and catching up, they finally turned to the matter at hand. I had been standing there awkwardly, feeling out of place, when Zoe's mother addressed us. Zoe, Marty, she said in a tone that got our attention. Please be good and fetch the tea and cookies from the kitchen. Lass, I exclaimed. Sorry, Marty, dear, Zoe's mother said, sounding sincere. A slip of the tongue. But given how you're dressed, can you at least understand my mistake? She sounded like she was teasing and apologizing at the same time. I didn't know how to respond, but the look Mama gave me said to be nice, which I decided was the best choice anyway. It's okay, I said quietly. I suppose if Zoe were wearing boys' clothes and someone called her a boy, it would be an honest mistake too. I didn't really believe that. Zoe had worn boys' clothing before. What girl hadn't? But girls weren't made to feel bad about themselves for doing so why couldn't it be the same? I sighed and turned to follow Zoe into the kitchen. He's wearing girls' undergarments. I heard Zoe's mother whisper to Mama in surprise. Zoe, I half whispered as best I could. What did you do to me? Nothing you didn't say you didn't want, she said plainly, her back to me. Nothing I didn't want? I was shocked. How could she think I wanted to be dressed up like a fairy girl? I never said I wanted to be a girl. You didn't have to, Zoe said, turning around to find me standing very close to her. But you did say you wondered what it felt like to be a girl, she said.
What?
I stammered. I had no memory of saying that. She stood up straighter so that we were nearly face to face. You said you wanted to know what it felt like to be a girl and to be cute like one. So, I tried to help you. I don't remember saying that, I said, still whispering. You did. I recorded it on my video camera. You have a video camera? I was surprised, though I shouldn't have been. Zoe's parents were well off, and she had most things she wanted. Still, I hadn't known about that. Besides, Zoe added, ignoring my question, I think you're cute. Cute? I was surprised. How could any girl see a boy in frilly dresses as cute? Was I like a living doll to her? Yes, she said as she leaned in and softly kissed my cheek. You are very cute in that way, she whispered so quietly that I barely heard. As she tried to slip past me, I stepped closer, blocking her against the counter. She started to ask what I was doing, and that's when I kissed her on the lips. She kissed me back. Well, I guess we know what prompted this little situation. Mama's voice behind us made both Zoe and me jump apart, both of us blushing deeply. Oh, how sweet, Pamela said. Our little ones are exploring feelings and attraction. She looked at my mother. Neither of them seemed genuinely amused. Why don't you two get yourselves to the couch? Pamela said with a motherly, commanding tone. We need to talk, Mama added. Zoe and I walked past our mothers into the living room. We both knew this wasn't going to be pleasant. I had hoped to change clothes before this conversation, but it looked like I wasn't getting that chance. At the very least, I hoped we'd figure out what had happened with my clothing so I could get back into my own things. We sat on the couch and glanced at each other, then decided we were too close and slid apart. I had to pull at the skirt of my short dress, which had twisted and bunched up. It was embarrassing to sit there in this outfit on the large couch. I fidgeted, feeling uncomfortable in ways I couldn't fix right then. I'd have to wait until I could stand up. Zoe gave me an apologetic smile and a small nod. She probably knew that feeling all too well, having been through plenty of dressy events when she was younger. Still, I couldn't believe she had done this to me. I wanted to say something harsh, but just as I settled in, our mothers walked into the room. Now, ladies, Mama began, and I do say ladies after what I overheard in the kitchen. Where do you even start to explain this? She gestured toward me. And Zoe, dear, her mother added, you'd better remember that I don't take it lightly when a young woman lies to anyone, especially her mother. She paused, then turned to me. That goes for you too, Martin. You may not be my child, but I'm quite sure your mother will be just as hard on you if you're dishonest. Every bit as much, Mama agreed. So, who talks first? She watched as Zoe and I exchanged uncertain looks. Martin sat on Zoe's couch, occasionally swinging his feet back and forth, not realizing how much like a small child it made him look. For the past 20 minutes, he had been explaining everything to the two mothers, seated barely 3 feet from the girl who had put him in this very feminine outfit. Earlier, when Martin had left his house with his mother, he had run straight into his best friend Randy at the front door. Being seen in a frilly petticoat dress was bad enough, but being walked to Zoe's house by his mother added another layer of shame. Having Randy there only made Martin feel like he would never live this day down. He had no idea how many people saw them on the sidewalk, and he hoped none noticed him almost skipping in that ridiculous dress as he tried to keep up with Randy. He'd had to grab Randy's arm a few times just to stay on his feet. Martin was sure his mother, walking behind them, was quietly amused and convinced that his undergarments were showing, even though they probably weren't. At the walkway to Zoe's house, Randy had listened to Martin's desperate plea not to come any farther. Despite all the teasing, Randy proved to be a good friend. He gave Martin what little dignity he could and headed home, wishing him well in a sarcastic but familiar way. The two young people had been caught in the kitchen, standing close together and sharing a kiss. It was actually Martin's second kiss with Zoe. He had started this one after she had kissed his cheek. Their mothers walked in at that moment, which led to a scolding and the two of them being seated side by side on the couch while the adults tried to sort everything out. Martin had told his mother he was an innocent victim of Zoe's imagination. He said she had flirted with him, led him upstairs, and given him something that made him drowsy. While he was out of it, he claimed she had changed him into these little girl's clothes and sent him home. But even Martin had trouble believing Zoe could have done all that alone. It seemed impossible that she could have pulled off everything in his room without help. Most of the questions had focused on Zoe's behavior, but the story didn't fully add up. So let me get this straight. Karen, Martin's mother, said, staring sternly at her son. You followed Zoe up the stairs when you knew she was wearing a dress that was too short. Martin nodded, blushing deeply. And you expect us to believe you're completely innocent? She continued. Mama? Martin said, his voice cracking. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Zoe cross her legs and blush. I wasn't. She just made it too easy to be curious, he mumbled. That is no excuse, Pamela, Zoe's mother snapped. Before anyone could respond, she turned to her daughter. And you, young lady, have been told to wear shorts or leggings under that dress, or not to wear it at all. Her tone promised punishment to come. Mommy, Zoe pleaded softly. Stop that, Pamela said firmly. You know better. Mom, Zoe said, sounding more like a teenager now. I didn't do anything wrong. He was the one being nosy. You were inviting that kind of attention, Pamela replied. As far as I'm concerned, you're just as responsible as he is. Zoe's face fell as she realized she couldn't shift all the blame onto Martin. Karen looked at Pamela, then back at her son. I never want to hear about you looking up a girl's dress again. Do you understand me? Mama, I already know how wrong that is, Martin said, throwing his hands up slightly. The motion made the sides of his dress lift, but the layers underneath kept anything from showing. He didn't realize that, though, and quickly pushed the fabric back down, his face turning bright red with embarrassment. No, Karen said firmly. I mean you will learn it firsthand from someone who won't let you forget it. Now, do you understand me? Yes, Mama, Martin said, staring at the floor. Good, she said, though her tone wasn't forgiving. Look at me when I'm talking to you. You know better than that. Her voice softened slightly, but it was still clear who was in charge. Pamela had left the room during the exchange and returned with the cookies the two young people were supposed to have brought earlier. The scent of fresh cookies caught Karen's attention, and with it, a memory. Martin had always been a good kid. Karen rarely needed to use strict measures, but she was good at them when she did. She had studied pre-med for 2 years in college, aiming for a career in psychiatric care before she met Robert. They had fallen in love quickly. If not for an unexpected pregnancy after an unwise celebration, she likely would have finished school. Both of them had dropped out to find steady work for their growing family. Karen never made it back to college. After the wedding, Lynn was born 8 months later.
For years after that, Martin arrived.
3 years ago, Karen had thought about returning to school. Lynn was old enough to watch Martin for a few hours after school. Robert had done well at his company and, even without a degree, earned a good living. He supported her completely. But as often happens, there was a problem. In Karen's case, it wasn't just a small obstacle, it was a disaster. She had been attending pre-semester refresher classes, a program designed by the local college to help adults returning to school ease back into campus life. She was only 2 weeks in when disaster struck. Karen had just sat down for her first afternoon class when her beeper went off. Her instructors knew she had children, like many parents in the room, and were generally understanding as long as it didn't become a habit. Karen was allowed to step out for a moment to check on things. She called home, and a frantic Martin answered. Something was terribly wrong. His words were broken by fear and tears, but she could make out something about an accident. In the background, she heard sirens. By the time Karen reached the house, the ambulance crew had already loaded Lynn into the back of the vehicle. Karen identified herself as the girl's mother. They quickly told her what they thought had happened and that Martin was with a neighbor, so she could ride with her daughter. Karen did, and it broke her heart. Lynn never made it to the hospital. A gas leak in the kitchen stove had caused a sudden burst of flames when Lynn opened the oven. She had been making the cookies Karen had promised Martin they would bake together the previous weekend, before Karen knew how much homework she would have. She never got around to it. She didn't even finish the homework. Karen never fully forgave herself for that. She dropped the idea of going back to school. She and Martin both went through a year of therapy as a precaution to help them process the accident. After all, it was an accident. Nothing anyone could have done would have changed the outcome. Still, Karen kept up her interest in psychology and psychiatry, but she never felt like returning to school. After the accident, and after having to let her son down by not keeping her promise to bake cookies with him, something she felt had somehow led to the tragedy. She couldn't bear to let school or career ambitions get in the way of family again. Karen shook her head. Martin had just asked her something, but she had missed it. "Mama," he repeated. "Are you okay?" "Yes, sweetheart," she said after a moment. "I'm sorry. What did you ask me?" "I asked if you wanted a cookie," Martin said, smiling and already eating one himself. "Karen, would you mind if we sent the kids upstairs for a moment?" Pamela asked her friend, showing concern over her sudden distraction. "We could let poor Marty get out of that frilly dress and into something less vulnerable," she said, searching for the right word. "Yes, that would be fine," Karen said after a pause. "I think we should talk more about these two anyway." Her tone grew firmer as she gestured for the kids to get off the couch. "Zoe, darling," Pamela began, "take Marty upstairs and find something less formal and frilly for him to wear, will you?" "Yes, Mama," Zoe answered dutifully. "And Zoe, Marty," Pamela added as the kids reached the stairs, "behave yourselves this time. Understand?" "Yes, ma'am," the two replied in unison, followed by a small giggle at their accidental harmony. Once the sounds of the kids moving around upstairs could be heard, the two adults moved into the study. Pamela closed the door behind them. The room wasn't as large as the study at Karen's house, but it wasn't set up as an office or a library either. It felt more open and functional for family use. Karen had always liked it, but she couldn't bring herself to change her own home office setup. "Karen, what happened out there?" Pamela asked, sitting down on the small couch in the room. "Nothing, Pam," Karen replied, sitting at the other end. There wasn't much space between them, and the closeness that usually felt cozy now felt confining. "Just something I'd almost forgotten." "Karen," Pamela said softly, like a gentle scolding, "you're never going to forget what happened. You wouldn't want to, but don't let it bring you down now." "I know. I'm trying to be strong and logical about it," Karen said, her voice wavering. "But it's hard this time of year." "I know, dear." Pamela slid closer and put her arm around her friend in a gentle hug. "But remembering isn't a bad thing. You just have to remember the good things, not just the bad." "I know. It's just hard. It's only been 3 years." Karen started crying, leaning her head on Pamela's shoulder. "I know. But think about Lynn making the varsity cheerleading team as a freshman. She was so happy, and you and Robert were so proud of her." Pamela continued gently. "And what about the funny things she did? Her sense of humor and jokes? Or how about when she had Martin be her magician's assistant and dressed him in that little formal gown and leotard?" Her voice trailed off. "Oh my goodness." Karen sat up, so quickly they almost bumped heads. "Do you think that's what started this with him?" "It couldn't be, could it?" Pamela asked. "Why not?" Karen said. "He was young and would do anything to please his sister and us. And once after Lynn died, I caught him wearing one of her skirts. In fact, he threw a fit when we were cleaning out her closet. He insisted on keeping her pants and t-shirts because he said anyone could wear those, not just girls. He just wanted something to remember her by." Pamela nodded. "That's not unusual. And besides, he's right. Nothing you gave him was strictly girls' clothing." "No, but he kept her performance outfits, even her cheerleading uniform. He has them all in his closet in a special section with her picture and everything." "So what?" Pamela didn't see how that connected to what had happened with Zoe. That sounds like a private remembrance spot at the back of his closet. That's not unhealthy. Despite the age difference, Lynn was very good to him. They were very close. Yeah, I suppose so, Karen said. I guess I'm just grasping at straws trying to figure this out. Well, why don't we get you cleaned up and go upstairs to talk to the kids some more? Pamela suggested. We haven't really gotten deep into this with them yet, have we? Not nearly enough, Karen agreed. Thanks, Pam. That's what friends are for, Pamela replied. I have some makeup in the downstairs bathroom if you want to freshen yours up. Thanks. Karen smiled at her friend and headed to the bathroom, which had doors to both the living room and the study. She locked them both once inside. A few minutes later, Karen came out looking much more like she had when she arrived. Let's go up quietly and see what they're doing, Pamela said.